Before we get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to Pack Leashes, the #1 spot to get all your leashes, collars, harnesses for the pups in your family. Right now, if you use promo code Marley and you can get 20% off. So follow the link in the description below and join the pack today. So for this video today, we are going to jump into the top 5 NFL draft misses of all time for the Raiders. What this video consists of really is the worst picks the Raiders made in comparison to the person who was picked right after them, right? So their pick that they made, the pick directly following them, and the players that they turned into, right? So this is going to be the top 5 NFL draft misses of all time by the Raiders. Coming in at number 5 is defensive end Jihad Ward, drafted 44th overall in 2016. He was a guy that came out of Illinois. We drafted in the second round, 6'5", 297 when he's coming out of the combine. A lot of the analysts said very mobile for his size, kind of one of those projects that was going to end up trying to figure out how, where he's going to be, where he's going to end up. July 2017, it was revealed that he had surgery on his left foot after injuring during a workout. He ended up only playing in 21 games, 14 of which he started, finished his career with the Raiders with only 32 tackles and 1 sack. The player drafted directly after him, running back Derrick Henry, who was taken 45th overall by the Titans. Henry obviously has put himself in the NFL rushing records a few times, including being one of 8 players to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season. Number 4 on this list, linebacker Napoleon Harris, drafted 23rd overall in 2002. In that 2002 year, as everyone knows, that was the year the Raiders made it to the Super Bowl and just got waxed by John Gruden, who was recently traded to the Buccaneers. So coming out of college, he was 6'3", 253, ran a 4.55 40-yard dash, 2-time second-team All-Big Ten in college. It was rated as the best linebacker in his class. His career with the Raiders, though, farthest thing from any hope of a first-round pick at all. Totaled 249 tackles, 2.5 sacks over a 3-year span. He will most notably go down as the player named in the blockbuster trade that sent Randy Moss to the Raiders from Minnesota in 2005, along with some draft picks. The player that was drafted directly after him, safety Ed Reed, drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, who everybody knows went on to be one of the greatest defensive backs in all of the NFL, forever of all time. Number 3 on this list, defensive end Clelin Ferrell, taken 4th overall in 2019. Ferrell will go down as the most recent draft bust that everyone kind of points to, in the same vein as the number 1 person on this list. You might be able to jump ahead and guess who that is, but nonetheless, we will get into that soon. So, 2019, coming off of just trading Khalil Mack the year before, the Raiders are trying to find that who's the next guy up, who's going to fill the spot. Not that anyone was going to fill in for an all-galaxy type player like Khalil Mack, but they were looking for that next guy. He was coming out of Clemson, part of a very dominant 3-headed monster. There was 2 defensive tackles, Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence, who were both taken 13th overall and 17th overall, so in the top 20. The funny thing about his career with the Raiders is that it really wasn't devastatingly short like the other players. As a first-round pick, you got your 4-year contract, and then you have your 5th option that could be picked up. When it came down to it, as everyone knows, the Raiders just didn't pick up his option, right? And it was more because he didn't pan out into what was expected of him, right? And that's where obviously the bust kind of comes into play. But nonetheless, he finished with 105 tackles, 10 total sacks in a span of 58 games with the Raiders. The player drafted directly after Clelin Ferrell, LSU linebacker Devin White, as everyone remembers. Drafted by Tampa Bay, 5th overall. Went on to win a Super Bowl with them. He's widely regarded as the poster child for the new age linebacker who can play sideline to sideline, which is something that the Raiders have so desperately needed for such a long time. I can tell you right now, between both me and Andy, so pissed we didn't take Devin White. Both of us, that's really where we wanted to go. I'm sure majority of Raider Nation doubles down on that sentiment. Number 2 on the list, cornerback Fabian Washington, taken 23rd overall in 2005. You know, there's always been that stigma that the Raiders draft for speed, right? Al Davis's thing, draft for speed, draft for individual traits. The Raiders have done that so many times and it has failed them. This was one of them, right? So Fabian Washington ran a 4.29 40. At that time, it was like blow you out of the water, like holy crap. Like nowadays, somewhat commonplace. Like that's obviously still very fast, but there's corners and wide receivers you kind of expect to run in that, you know, I'm not going to say in the 4.2s, right? But a high 4.2, you know, low to mid 4.3s. So at that point, the Raiders were in a position, 7-year vet Charles Woodson missed the last 3 weeks of 2004 season, leg injury. He was playing on the franchise tag. So in 2005, they also franchise tagged him. And then after 6 games, he broke his leg, ended the season, effectively ending his career as a Raider until he came back inside later on. That was kind of the same situation where you've got, you know, the old guard and Charles Woodson. They're looking for that next kind of top end corner that can come in and be the new young guy. Didn't pan out. Washington played 45 games, only had 123 total tackles, 5 interceptions. The Raiders acquired D'Angelo Hall, and they started shopping him just 3 years after drafting him. They ended up trading him for a 4th overall to the Baltimore Ravens. The player that was drafted directly after cornerback Fabian Washington at number 24 overall, Aaron Rodgers, taken by the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, Rodgers went on to win a Super Bowl 2011, is putting his place in the record books and will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's once his career is done. He's still playing right now, right? So Fabian Washington taken ahead of Aaron Rodgers during a time frame where the Raiders quarterback situation was like in the middle of just their dire straits. And number 1 on this list, you haven't seen it already, you could probably guess it, quarterback Jamarcus Russell, taken 1st overall in 2007. The crazy part about this is not only just how the biggest, it's one of the biggest miss, probably the biggest miss of all time by the Raiders, just as a drafted player is concerned in general, but even for the reasons for this video, right? Comparing it in regards to who was taken afterwards, this one just solidifies it and takes the cake. Okay, so Jamarcus Russell jumps on the scene as a quarterback at LSU. National championship game, goes 21 for 34, 332 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick in a game where they went out and just beat the brakes off Brady Quinn and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You know, he wowed people with his arm. He, you know, famously was noted for throwing it 70 yards from his knees, right? Just a rocket cannon of an arm. But after the Raiders drafted him 1st overall, things went downhill. He had, you know, a bunch of off the field issues. He had a bunch of in-house problems. There was the, you know, the story about them giving him blank tapes and him lying about watching it and just being like, oh yeah, I watched all the coverages. It looks great. Well, yeah, everything that you said, talked about, works great. So Russell played 31 games, passed for 4,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 23 interceptions for a measly 52.1 completion percentage. Now, this is the best part of it all, right? Everyone knows he was taken 1st overall. 2nd overall pick by the Detroit Lions, Calvin Johnson, Hall of Fame wide receiver. To add insult to injury, the 3rd overall player picked in that draft by the Cleveland Browns was offensive tackle Joe Thomas, who is also in the Hall of Fame. So 2 of the top 3 players drafted in that draft made the Hall of Fame, and neither of them were the Raiders pick. So there you have it. Top 5 draft misses, and not just about like the player, but more about they missed the pick in regards to who was picked right after them. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Got the draft coming up in a week or so, week and a half, 2 weeks roughly. It's why we had to do something like this. Obviously hate talking about the bad, but nonetheless, let's enjoy it. Let's get excited. We are in better times.